It happened 5.5 millennia ago in the damp womb of a cave that still holds the breath of those who entered it and never came out. 11 souls, men, women, and children, were undone, bone by bone. The marrow was sucked as the last echo of their names faded into stone. Their skulls boiled until silence itself could no longer recognize them. This was not war as we imagine it. It was a slower, more intimate cruelty. Where the victors marked their triumph, with tooth marks, with the steam of boiling bones, rising like ghostly prayers, archaeologists tell us it was a clash of tribes. A struggle for land and power. But in truth, it was something far older, that dark inheritance we still carry, hidden in the marrow of our own history.
Today we're going deep, really deep, into something ancient and, frankly, pretty unsettling. It challenges how we often think about our past. Our sources today center on this really compelling article from Ars Technica. The title kind of says it all. Did a rival tribe kill and eat their neighbors 5,700 years ago? So yeah, we're going to unpack archaeological evidence from Spain. It paints this incredibly vivid but disturbing picture of prehistoric human behavior. We'll look at the science, the actual process behind reaching such a shocking conclusion, and maybe explore what it tells us about, well, human nature itself. Okay, so let's jump right in with the main finding. Archaeologists concluded that human remains from 11 different people found in El Mirador cave in Spain. They show clear evidence of cannibalism. And this isn't just speculation. It's all laid out in the new paper in Scientific Reports.
Right, and it's important to note this El Mirador finding, while stark, isn't completely out of the blue for the bigger Sierra de Atapuerca site. There's history there.
History? What kind of history?
Well, previous digs found things like early Bronze Age remains, even skull caps that might have been used as containers.
Yep.
Maybe for ceremonial drinking or eating.
Skull caps as containers. Wow.
Yeah. And even older, going back to finds since 1994, in the Grandalina cavern at Atapuerca, specifically the Aurora stratum layer, they found over 160 human bone fragments there. And get this, over 30% showed signs of butchering. Slice marks, scrape marks, chop marks, signs of consumption.
Okay, so Atapuerca has this grim background, but let's focus back on El Mirador for this deep dive. How did they figure this specific instance out? What was the method?
Okay, so for El Mirador, the team did this incredibly detailed analysis. They looked at over 5,000 human remains, 5,056 to be exact, from 2 areas in the cave. The main tool was high magnification microscopy, really lets you see the fine details on the bone surfaces.
Right.
Then, for timing, they took 8 samples for radiocarbon dating. And that placed the event really precisely between 5,700 and 5,570 years ago.
Okay, so late Neolithic period.
Exactly. And here's a really key part. 5 bones also went through strontium isotope testing.
Strontium isotopes. That tells you where someone grew up, based on the geology and water they consumed, right?
Precisely. It's like a geographical fingerprint in the bones.
Wow.
And the results. They showed these individuals were local to the Atapuerca region, not outsiders brought in from far away.
Okay, let's unpack the microscopy then. You said high magnification. What were they actually seeing? What marks screamed cannibalism and not something else?
Yeah, this is where it gets pretty forensic. The microscope showed, a whole pattern of signs. Very specific slice marks, scrape marks, chop marks, suggesting stone tools were used to butcher.
Like animal butchery, but on humans.
Exactly the same kind of marks, but there was more. They found evidence of burning, suggesting cooking. Peeling marks, which could mean skinning. Fractures consistent with breaking bones open, probably from marrow.
Marrow extraction. Gosh.
And even human tooth marks. Directly on the bone.
Human tooth marks, that's unambiguous.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And crucially, it wasn't just random damage. The pattern of all these marks together, skinning, cutting flesh off, disarticulating the joints, breaking bones, cooking it, points to a systematic process for consumption.
It sounds incredibly methodical, almost chillingly so.
Yeah.
Can you give us some really specific examples from the source? What were some of the bones that showed this most clearly?
Yeah, the article mentions some stark ones. They found an infant's femur, a thigh bone, with percussion marks specifically for getting the marrow out.
An infant.
Yes, and lots of limb bones that were fragmented and showed cannibalism marks. It wasn't just one or two individuals. They found a human maxilla, the upper jawbone, that had been cannibalized. Even a foot bone had cut marks, suggesting really thorough dismemberment.
Wow.
And another thing that isotope analysis suggested, tying back to that, was that this likely happened quickly. The consumption probably took place over just a few days, a single intense event.
Okay, so the evidence seems strong. But one of the co-authors, Palmira Saladier, she noted how complex interpreting cannibalism is, how biases can creep in. She said, cannibalism is one of the most complex behaviors to interpret. Because, well, it's humans eating humans. It's hard to grasp. So how did the researchers make sure they weren't jumping to conclusions? Did they consider other explanations, rule things out?
Absolutely. That's, standard scientific practice, but especially crucial here. They systematically looked at alternatives.
Like, what else could explain those marks?
Okay, one possibility was funerary rituals. Some ancient practices did involve messing with bones, removing skulls, disarticulating bodies. Marks could happen.
Right.
But the key difference here was the scale. Those kinds of rituals usually only affect a small percentage of the remains, maybe like 1 to 5%.
Right.
At El Mirador, almost all the bones showed these modifications. Way too widespread for the known patterns of funerary rituals.
Okay, so scale ruled out ritual. What else?
Injuries from weapons, fighting,
Yep.
stone axes, spears, whatever they had. Those can leave slice and chop marks.
Sure, makes sense.
But weapon injuries are usually concentrated, often on the ribs, the vertebrae, places you'd strike in combat. The El Mirador pattern wasn't like that. It was full body processing, consistent with getting meat, not just inflicting wounds.
All right, so not ritual, not combat wounds. What about the classic idea starvation? Famine.
Yeah, that's often the go-to assumption for cannibalism, isn't it? Desperate times. But they checked the paleo-environmental data for that specific time period. Pollen records, climate indicators, that sort of thing. And there were no signs of, a major drought or environmental collapse that would cause severe, widespread famine. Now, they do acknowledge you can't completely rule out a very short, sudden crisis, maybe a crop blight or disease that wiped out food stores quickly, that wouldn't leave a trace.
Right, some things just don't fossilize.
Exactly. But another point against the general famine idea is who was eaten. Famine typically hits the most vulnerable, hardest, the very old, the very young.
And the El Mirador victims.
They covered a much broader age range. Infants, yes, but also children, adolescents, adults. It didn't fit the typical demographic profile of famine victims.
I see.
So, summing it up, the researchers felt the patterns just didn't line up with rituals or weapon trauma. And while a sudden untraceable food crisis is possible, the broader evidence, including the age range and lack of climate stress, pointed away from starvation. Instead, everything was consistent with, and they listed out, meat, viscera, bone marrow, and brain extraction, plus fresh bone breakage, burning, pot polishing.
Pot polishing, what's that?
That's when bones get stirred around in a cooking pot, and the ends get smooth and sort of polished from the abrasion against the pot.
Ah, okay, direct evidence of cooking in a vessel.
Right, and of course the human tooth marks, all pointing towards consumption.
So, with rituals and famine looking unlikely, what did the researchers conclude? Francesc Marginetis, another co-author, was quoted saying this was neither a funerary tradition nor a response to extreme famine.
Right.
So what was it?
Their conclusion was pretty stark. They termed it a violent episode.
A violent episode.
Yeah. The evidence, especially the speed and systematic nature of it all, pointed to a rapid, intense event. Most likely, they suggest, it was the result of conflict. Conflict between neighboring groups, probably early farming communities in the area.
Conflict between neighbors?
And they note, look, there were other Neolithic massacres known from Europe, places in Germany, other sites in Spain. Mass killings happened. But the unique thing, or particularly disturbing thing about El Mirador, is the evidence for systematic consumption of the victims afterwards.
So it wasn't just kill and bury, it was kill and utilize.
Essentially, yes. Using the bodies as a resource after the conflict, it adds another layer to the violence.
That really forces you to confront a darker aspect of our history, doesn't it?
Yeah.
even in these early farming societies that maybe we sometimes imagine as simpler or more peaceful.
It absolutely does. And Antonio Rodriguez Hidalgo, another co-author, put it quite directly. He said, basically, conflict and the strategies to manage it are part of human nature.
Part of human nature.
Yeah, and looking at anthropology and archaeology more broadly, it backs this up. Even in smaller scale, less complex societies, you see evidence of intense violence. And sometimes consuming enemies was part of that. A way to, as they put it, achieve the ultimate elimination. It wasn't just about killing them, but about utterly destroying them, maybe absorbing their power or just maximum desecration.
Ultimate elimination.
It raises profound questions about how deep these patterns of conflict run and the extreme forms they could take even thousands of years ago.
So, to recap, the findings from El Mirador Cave are pretty striking.
Yeah.
Clear evidence of a systematic, violent act of cannibalism happening around 5,700 years ago in Spain, likely driven by conflict between groups, not by ritual needs or starvation. It's a significant insight into our prehistoric past.
It really is, and it highlights how crucial that careful scientific work is. Looking at the marks, the context, the dating, the isotopes, it lets us move past maybe our assumptions or biases about the past and confront these complex, sometimes very disturbing human behaviors head on.
Yeah, the El Mirador discovery feels like more than just a, grim historical fact. It's a powerful reminder, isn't it, about conflict being a long-standing part of the human story, and the extreme ways societies have dealt with enemies or perceived enemies. Thinking about that phrase, ultimate elimination, what does seeing this level of prehistoric conflict expressed in such a, visceral way, what does that suggest to you about the roots of human aggression and how it shaped our history? Something to really mull over.